was moving last week.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Thursday.
Oh,
Thursday this week.
Thursday this week.
All right.
you'll come on from your little garret in Blackpool, won't you, next week?
No, I'm coming on from the Big Dipper actually next week, John.
Bragging again.
Right, the Little Dipper then in that case.
Well, you better call the meeting to order.
Nice cricket yesterday, wasn't it, Clive?
Yeah. Good game of cricket. Yeah.
Have they played today yet, Clive?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No, I don't think so.
They hadn't about 12.
Mm.
They hadn't played at about 12 o'clock when they phoned me for some advice. Oh, look, your study looks very empty. All those pictures have gone.
It is, it's all gone.
Yeah.
Just waiting for the removal people now.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll miss you.
Well, I might keep turning up on these meetings.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
There might be an advantage to going back to the Grand then, you see, quickly, because you could get rid of me in that way.
No, we're still going to do down the line. I think our president's going to fix that. So you can watch from Blackpool.
I'm not Blackpool. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Barry, for the tip yesterday about Crosby Beach. Just to make you envious, I'm about 250 yards away from where they were filming.
Yeah,
Or I will be.
It's a brilliant part of the country, that.
Is that the place with all the naked men, Paul?
That's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
Called the other place, Anthony Gormley. There's about 100. They were put in 15 years ago as a temporary exhibit, but they're now as a permanent exhibit. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I modelled for them.
You didn't, John. They're all modelled actually on Anthony Gormley.
I know that.
I think you've some red squirrels nearby as well, Paul.
I have indeed, yes. You need to watch your nuts when you're there. Thank you very much.
Formby Sands is also the best location in Britain for sand lizards, so you can watch out there.
Terrific. So not only are you watching your nuts, you've got to make sure you're wearing a pair of bike clips as well then when you go to Formby.
Oh, they're all right. They're quite safe.
And you need webbed feet because they've got quicksands there, Paul.
Good.
Okay, guys, should we make a start?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. On that note, I'm just going to mute all. How do I mute?
Keep trying.
Okay, I've now muted everybody. If you could just give me a thumbs up to let me know you can hear me okay. Perfect. Okay, you can still unmute yourself. So if you need to join back in, just press the unmute button on your device. So welcome everybody to this Rotary meeting on the 27th of July. I'd just like to first of all welcome any guests that we have. So I see we have Louise.
Hi guys.
Louise, hello.
Hi. Nick will be getting something from me, promise.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Thanks for that. And do you have any other guests? I don't see anybody else yet. Okay.
Greetings from the Rotary Club of Leicester Novas.
Ah, okay, who was that? Oh, hi, yes, sorry. How did I miss you? Sorry, Pam. Good to have you on. Okay, and do we have any greetings from other clubs? No, none today. Okay. I'd just like to mention a couple of things. I'm planning to run a family quiz. It will be run over Zoom, and it will involve Rotarians and their families coming together, just like we are here, and enjoying a couple of hours, an hour perhaps, maybe hour and a half of a quiz night. So I'm going to be sending out an email. If anybody's interested, please let me know, because I'd love to run something like that, just to bring us together on an evening, perhaps every other Friday. There'll be a small £5 donation to make, with all the funds going to a good cause. So watch out for that. That's currently being set up. I'm also in contact with somebody from De Montfort University. She contacted us, I think it was about February of this year. It took us a while to get hold of her. I believe all the students have been really busy with everything that's been going on in terms of the changes. And so she took a while to come back, but she came back to me over the weekend and is interested in setting up some kind of a society or a satellite club for De Montfort University students. So that's looking really positive, and that's something I'll update everybody on once I hopefully speak to her at some point today. I've got her number, and I'll update. So that's looking very positive. Do you have any notices, Barry, at this point? No? Okay. So unless we've got anything else that we need to mention, I will go straight to the speaker, who is Riaz Ravat. Now Riaz has joined us. I know we had a bit of trouble getting you on originally with the link. Riaz, are you there? Yep, I'll just, could you unmute yourself? There we go, okay, great. So Riaz will be talking to us about the St. Philip Centre, past, present and future. So looking forward to your talk, and take it away. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the invitation. Delighted to be with you all. Good afternoon. There are some colleagues, friends, and I should say a current boss and a former boss on this teleconference, with Gordon, who's a trustee of the centre, and Barry, a very renowned former trustee of St. Philip Centre as well. Good to see you all today. Pomdik, how long do I have in terms of time, and then questions as well, just to get that?
So you have about 15 to 20 minutes for the presentation, plus around 5 minutes for questions. So is that okay?
Lovely. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. So a bit of background to St. Philip Centre. In this world now, Black Lives Matter, we hear quite a lot about different groups, different organisations. St. Philip Centre is operating in the field of interfaith relations. We are about educating and creating a stronger understanding between people of different faiths and beliefs. That's working at a community level, but also working across the public sector. But St. Philip Centre needs a bit more of an explanation. It is not a traditional interfaith centre. It is a interfaith centre rooted in the Christian tradition. St. Philip Centre has a very strong Christian heritage. Without the Diocese of Leicester, the centre wouldn't exist. It has an ecumenical group of trustees, but it's that Christian heritage, it's that Christian ethos which allows it to interfaith work. So this is not a secular, neutral interfaith organisation. This is one very much rooted and very proud of its Christian origins, but because of that connection, it gives it the confidence to engage and work with all sections of society. So St. Philip Centre is not a membership body. We are an open organisation. We are rooted by 4 values of trust, encounter, cooperation, and respect. So these are the 4 values which underpin the work of St. Philip Centre. We've been around since 2006. And there are 2 versions as to who created the centre. I have a huge amount of respect for everybody involved, and therefore I will play the diplomatic card by saying both versions are absolutely correct and absolutely valid. The founder director, Andrew Wingate, who is one of Her Majesty's chaplains, of course, was given a task by the then Bishop of Leicester, Tim Stevens, to set up an interfaith centre, to look at training and to look at educating in an area where the parish of St. Philip's had the 3rd fewest Christians in the country. So back in at the start of this century, the parish of St. Philip's had the third fewest Christians in the country. Now, the task was, you either sell up your building, because the church is next door to us, and go away, or you try and reinvent yourself for a different purpose. And to their credit, they took the second view, which is we can have a place of hospitality and friendship to others, but we can also be proudly confident in our Christian identity. The other version is that the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Williams, Rowan Williams, launched an initiative called Presence and Engagement, which was exactly about giving Christians confidence in areas where they are living as minorities. That also is a very valid version, and Archbishop Rowan was our founder patron at the time. But the reality is, in terms of where the centre is now to where it was back in 2006, we are in a very, very different place. Where we're in an even more difficult place and different place with, of course, the impact of COVID. But what began as a centre primarily to train Christians to understand their neighbours is now an organisation where I would say upwards of 90% of our output is working with people from different faith communities, public bodies, and other stakeholders. It's an organisation which was very much local at the time, is still very much local in terms of its work and in terms of the staff base, but its footprint is much more broader. Not only do we work across our city and county, across our region, in some parts of the country, but also now internationally as well. And I have examples of all of those to give you in a few moments. St. Philip's Centre is, I guess there are three words which I guess cover what we do: training, education, and engagement. They're the three words that I would say encompass the work of the centre. Being true to our Christian traditions, the director of the centre is appointed by, or certainly is given the approval of the bishop upon his appointment or her appointment. We're now into our third director now. The director of the centre has two roles: director of the centre, but also the bishop's interfaith advisor. So it's a very strongly rooted connection to the high echelons of the Diocese of Leicester. We have a church's training officer whose job it is to go out, engage with different church groups, to get them to understand and appreciate and reflect upon the diverse communities that they're living and working alongside. My work is primarily taking care of the corporate training. Ever since the centre began, we've been running training courses for Leicestershire Police. So in short, every new police recruit within Leicestershire undertakes a foundation degree, certainly if they're a starting police officer, I should say, a foundation degree. Within that degree, they do a day on understanding the different religions and beliefs, and St. Philip's Centre delivers that training. We've done some work with the armed forces, locally, also nationally as well, the fire service. We've done some work with a few private companies, not a huge number, if I'm being honest, but the fire services one. The single biggest footprint of the centre are our schools work. The 80% of those that we engage with per annum, and it's roughly 12,000. Of course, this year we've taken a massive hit, but I can talk about COVID later on. But a huge part of our work is our schools work. Without the schools work, the St. Philip's Centre, I guess, flavour would be very, very different. And the schools offer works in a number of ways. Either schools come to us and we facilitate visits to places of worship, or indeed we go out to schools in Lincolnshire, Northamptonshire, and much further afield. And that is where I think the centre is at its strongest. The centre is at its strongest because I feel that we are not a membership organisation. We are able to work with a broad range of people. We're forever meeting people who have never engaged with the centre before or engaged with these issues before. And so that is a very, very important part of our work, particularly in terms of future-proofing the values that underpin the work of the centre. There are two very significant government contracts that we run from the centre and have done since the start of this decade. One is the programme called Near Neighbours, which comes through the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. We are one of a handful of centres which administers a grant scheme, which operates in the city of Leicester and also for us in Nottingham. Of course, Bradford, Leeds, Manchester are also areas where this scheme works. And we administer a grant scheme which simply are about bringing people together. If you happen to live in the city of Leicester and you want to run a neighborhood group or have a street party, near neighbors would consider funding that because you are bringing people together of different backgrounds. And we've been fortunate that we've had a very good run at this since 2010. The other government contract we have at the centre is the Prevent contract. And Prevent is one part of the UK government's counter-terrorism strategy. Began under Labour, then we had, of course, a coalition government, and now we have a Conservative government. We've had the coordinator, Prevent coordinator, employed by the centre. We are the only charity in the country that employs the Prevent coordinator. The rest of them are all based within the local authority. And this deals with radicalisation, deals with extremism, a vast area, an area which is constantly changing, consistently changing. And we've been asked to take on additional responsibilities, including employing the regional coordinator too. Again, I'd be happy to take conversations, questions on this later on as well. I mentioned international. Most of our work up until the last, say, 2 years has primarily been receiving groups from overseas. We are not arrogant enough to say that Leicester has the answers to everything. We have our own challenges, we have our own context, we have our own story. And up until a few years ago, most of the groups that visited us were international exchange groups, and countries such as India, Sweden. We have a very, very large following in Sweden. Probably about 35, 40 groups have been to us over the last 15, 16 years. We've had Norwegian groups, Danish, isolated visitors from America, New Zealand, and so on. And usually it's about learning about the Leicester recipe, but we also want to learn from them. Jordan comes to mind as well. Jordan was another delegation. But about 2 years ago, we began a new project called COPS Communities Consent, which is a partnership between St Philip's Centre, Leicestershire Police, Antwerp Police, and Rotterdam Police. And this is primarily about how do we broaden and diversify the pipeline of interest in policing. It's, since Stephen Lawrence's death, of course, we had the Macpherson report, which spoke about institutional racism. In the immediate years after, a number of police forces saw some boost in recruitment, but actually that's tailed off. We do not have a reflective police force, not only in Leicestershire, but in many, many parts of this country. We didn't need Black Lives Matter to tell us that. Black Lives Matter, I think, has woken a lot of people up. But this is a problem that's been occurring for quite some time. This project has a number of areas of work, a number of strands. I should say St Philip's Centre is not offering jobs to people. It's not our job to offer police jobs to people in our communities. What we are trying to do is to widen and broaden the pipeline. And so some of the examples of work that we're doing are going into schools and colleges, running an exhibition about policing careers. Now, if any of you are like me, I find exhibitions rather boring, but these are different types of exhibitions. These are exhibitions where you touch, you feel, you smell, you taste, dare I say, but there are different ways in which you engage with it. So to give you an example, we have 4 boards on one of them, and the boards relate to the roles that sniffer dogs have. So you've got to sniff inside those boxes to find out what's in there, and you lift up the box and it gives you the answer. We have a forensic test where you have to find within a time-limited allocated slot 2 letters within a whole body of text. So what we've done is to try and make policing a bit exciting, a bit more creative, a bit more engaging. And this is going to be long-term. This is going to be a very significant challenge, a challenge which the police can't overcome on their own. They need partners with them. But it also means that a bit of humble pie needs to be eaten as well, that there are things that are currently in operation which frankly haven't worked, and there has to be a different approach around that. I guess the last point I'd throw in is St Philip's Centre, and I guess the interfaith world as a whole is often accused of being operating at the sort of softer end of the spectrum. This is something we've walked well away from. There are a number of representative interfaith organisations where it is a club, as I mentioned, a group of people meeting and talking, and there's a huge amount of value to that. But in terms of where we are, I've given an example of Prevent, which is a very sensitive subject for some. But St Philip's Centre does not shy away from the tectonic plates which affect our community relations. And terrorism is one, child sexual exploitation is another, Hindu-Muslim relations is another area as well. There are Jewish-Muslim as well. There are a whole series of them. To give you one example, just at the start of this year, we launched a initiative called Come Dine Together. And some of you may be aware of that dreadful program on Channel 4 called Come Dine With Me, where the jokes are very good, but the food is atrocious. We decided to launch a scheme similar to that, bringing ordinary Hindus and ordinary Muslims together who have never met before. And we took that risk because we saw towards the end of last year a number of developments in India which were having a massive impact here. And we are now living in a world where the global is very, very much the local. And we can't divorce ourselves from developments thousands of miles away and hope that we would somehow be immune from that. And so I've noticed, certainly in the time that I've been at the centre, and I've been at the centre since 2008, that there's been a massive change, that much more of our work is now on, to some extent, firefighting, repairing relations, let alone building them, than was the case when I first began. So the landscape has changed. COVID has had a very significant impact. It's impacted upon us as a charity in terms of our finances. Our school's work has completely dried off. We will now go back into the world as it is, in a very, very different place, with arguably more challenges, more barriers to overcome. And I guess for me, when I look at some of the narratives, some of the messaging around COVID and who is being blamed and which communities are being blamed, when we go back in and when we try and renew our work and take that baton on from previously, I think we're going to find some new barriers to engagement, new barriers to learning, and new barriers to understanding, which weren't there before. And so I think our work is going to be more important now than it's ever been. But of course, we are going to be in a very, very challenging climate, a very difficult climate, but one which we hope we can work with our public bodies on taking forward. And so that's where we are. That's I guess a very brief overview of the life and the work of the centre. I did send through, and some of you may have seen them now, some of you could look at them afterwards. We do have a series of videos about the work of the centre, which I would say are very, very good, because they include other people. I'm not on too many of them. And some of our service users will explain how they have found our work and some of our engagements. So I think I've shared some of these with the president, and I'm sure he'll pass them on to you. So please do have a look at those. We're very active on social media, much more than the website. So our social media feed, which is at SPC Leicester, is regularly updated with our work. And I guess just finally, we're always on the lookout for work. And if there are people, organisations that you feel would benefit from our work, please do send them in our direction. We'd be more than happy to help them. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Riaz. It's just such a shame, isn't it, that an organisation like yourselves doing such good work when you're needed most, it's at a time when you're going to be most constrained by the thought in terms of having the resources there. So it's going to definitely need some creativity, but I think your work is excellent, and well done.
Thank you.
So do we have any questions for Riaz? If you do, please unmute yourself. Yes, we have John. Go ahead, John.
Hi. Riaz, thank you very much for what you've said. I like your 3 points. And the middle point was about education. And my question is, you must go into schools with a very, very high percentage of Asian students who may, without you knowing, be Muslim or Hindu when you go from a Christian background. I wonder what kind of themes you adopt when you go as a Christian into that environment, because it must be quite challenging for you.
Thanks, John. I should just say that, first of all, I'm regarded by, I'm a Muslim by background. Gordon's heard me say this joke before, so he won't laugh. But I'm regarded as an adopted Anglican by my Muslim colleagues and peers. I've worked most of my working life for the Church of England. I have a huge amount of affinity and respect for the established church. And so I think my story is quite an important one in itself. If I happen to go in, I often give the example that I have the keys to St. Philip's Church, but I don't have the keys to the mosque, which is across the road, and that's quite telling in itself. But I think it's really important that we often become fixated by diversity, by usually it's race. So if we go into, I'll give you, some contrasting examples. You could go into a school in Leicester, my old school of Crown Hills, for example, and you'll find a very large Asian proportion there, and you probably will guess some of it will be by dress code, a portion which would be Muslim, a portion that's Hindu, possibly a portion that's Sikh. When you go into a school in Lincolnshire, in Boston, as we have done, the lazy understanding is you go in and you see a whole assembly of 100 children and you think there's no diversity here because they're all white. Then what you do is you then go and ask them, where were your parents born? Then you're told Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Slovakia. You're given that diversity, and we often become fixated. We don't see that as diversity, but it is. It is absolutely diverse. It is very different. And so those individual journeys, those life stories, I think are really, really important. The lesson that I would take away from our school's work is, before we even say a word, before we even utter a word, before we even talk about the golden rule which connects our different faith communities, when children see people of different backgrounds together talking and sharing, that speaks volumes. We have a program called a Religion Belief Roadshow, which is, it consists of a minibus, about 10 different people from different faith communities with clothing, food, artifacts, you name it. We go into a school and we have a festival. And the number one thing that the children comment on is, blimey, we didn't realize that you've got all of those different faiths getting on together and talking and sharing and working together. And for me, the message is wider. This is a Christian rooted organization that is doing that. And so, that's quite powerful. And so before we even say anything, before we even encourage the children to have that dialogue and understanding, the togetherness, I think, is quite important. Because I did a focus group recently with a Hindu school in Leicester. And the phrase was used by one child, rivalries among religions. And they're used to seeing that even at that young age. And so for us to show that display and that genuine friendship and connection between them, they don't go around to one school once a year. This is a team that's forever going around doing that. These are our faith practitioners who do this on a regular basis. Yeah. And so I think approaching that by making sure when you go into every single school, it may be your 100th school of the year, but for that child, it's their first visit. And it's remembering that the way you conduct yourself, the way you show yourself, the way you speak, the way you articulate yourself, that child will go home and tell their parents. That child will talk to their classmates. So it's really important. I don't use that as a lost opportunity. We may only ever see that child once, but it's once more than we would have done if we were sat at home and not doing anything at the centre, if we weren't delivering our school's work. So every opportunity has to count.
Thank you, Riaz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have another question? Yes, Clive.
Riaz, you talked very fluently, I thought, about the Leicester recipe, and you touched on the national and international work that you do. I'm intrigued to know to what extent that recipe has been changed by the whole COVID thing and the notoriety we've achieved, I'm afraid, by dint of where we're at.
Yeah. Thanks, Clive. Put it this way, every single video conference I seem to attend these days, the first 10 minutes will be spent on me explaining what's happening in Leicester. It is embarrassing. I'm not going to hold back on that. It is embarrassing. It doesn't look good. The narrative has changed. Some of you may have read the New York Times recently, and the first paragraph was a killer. And it began with Leicester, a city of garment factories and mass exploitation. Where is Richard III? Where is the Space Center? Where are all the other developments? So it has changed. The narrative has changed for the worse. The Leicester recipe has been very much built on its own communities and the uniqueness of its own communities. We often say, when Antwerp and Rotterdam will be examples of that. There are some things that work in Leicester that will only ever work in Leicester because of the journeys that we have. Leicester is the most Indian city in the UK. And by Indian, I mean those who are either born in India or have family connections going back to India. That is in sharp contrast to Burnley or Leeds or Birmingham or cities, other diverse cities in the UK. So our recipe is very much unique to this context. But I do feel that there are some inherent challenges within our city, and some inherent challenges which other commentators have spoken about as well. That, you know, the first phase, I guess, of multiculturalism was where we give people a sense of being in who they are, give them that comfort, give them that confidence in who they are. The second stage, the evolution of that, has to be where we bring in share with one another, where we look over our garden fence and speak to people from a different background and connect with them. That's a very, very significant challenge. And I think that's been compounded by COVID, where there has been a blame game, not just between central government and local. If you look at my mobile phone and the kind of poisonous WhatsApp messages that go around, blaming one community over another, these are powerful messages. And critical thinking is at the heart of this. I'll give you so many examples of it. It's very, very easy for us to just click forward to a video that's come through, because the originator of the video is not the person that I'm dealing with. The person who I'm dealing with is my relative or my friend. Of course I'm going to trust them. Of course it's valid. Of course it's credible, because it's my friend or my relative. But the damage that can do by being forwarded on is immense. And I do say, you know, that we all have to take a deep breath. Just ask ourselves the question, by doing this, am I doing the good? Am I doing good for our city and good for our county and indeed good for our country? And I do think social media has been the single biggest poison with COVID. I mean, I've seen some grotesque images that have come through and they've landed here in the UK and people are just forwarding on. It's not funny. It's not funny because somebody could end up being beaten up or somebody could end up being discriminated on the back of that. So the challenges, I think, have increased no end. I'm very pleased that the diocese, the university, and one or two other partners as well have launched this concept of Together in Hope, which is about putting out positive publicity and positive communications out. But this is now going to be a long-term strategy and a long-term challenge for us, because I suspect other cities probably won't be in lockdown after Leicester. We may be the only one. You know, we may have that Leicester exceptionalism on the back of this. Who knows? But it has raised a number of issues to the fore. And you're absolutely right. COVID has been a game changer. Whereas before, you know, to get people from different backgrounds to welcome each other into their homes for a meal, you know, Clive, that was a hard job in itself, you know, without this. Now that this has come through, it'll be, well, hang on, I don't want to do this. And even if I was 50-50, I'm definitely not going to do it now because I may get COVID from them. You know, I've heard some of that already. So, yeah, we've got a lot on our plate.
Yes, Patrick. You'll need to unmute yourself, Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for a fascinating presentation. And I think it's very interesting because in the first stage, in the 70s, the City Council in particular did a huge amount of work of the sort that you're doing, which ended up being, particularly with the museum service and so on. I remember after the initial arrival of the refugees from Kampala, we did within 3 months, museum mounted a huge, great festival with 18 different community and faith groups and so on, including Mothers Union and so on. But that's always, that indeed actually we received first specialist funding from the government, but then all of that funding dried up. All the work drove away and everybody's almost forgotten about it. But I think one thing I want to comment on is the international image of, or the international image of Leicester. I see in this morning's City Council handout, they've recorded 213 television and radio broadcasts focusing on the Leicester situation. But it's difficult to answer this thing. The last point I make is that 2 MPs, I won't name, but the MP for North West Leicestershire and the MP for Kettering, both got up in the House of Commons and said there was proof, they knew there was proof of over 1,000 slaves working in the Leicester garment industry. At long last, the Gangmasters Authority, which is supposed to deal with this, and the HMRC, which is supposed to deal with enforcing the minimum wage, despite there being pleas from the City Council for 3 or 4 years for them to come and actually do inspections in Leicester, they have been in, and they did not find a single slave, and only a tiny fraction of people who have been paid below the minimum wage. Most of those, I think, were due to misunderstandings and so on about whether people were paid for travel time in care industry, etc. The trouble is that once the bad news gets out, it's very difficult for the good to follow up or to contradict it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I ask you, can you hear me?
Yes, Don, go ahead.
Yes.
In terms of the work that you do, what is the value or otherwise of faith schools?
I'm glad you asked that. I've undergone a bit of a journey on this one. I've seen, I mean, as a rule, I have to say, I went to a state school, Crown Hills, and in the evening I attended a madrasa, supplementary school. So I had the balance of my colleagues and friends from different backgrounds during the day, for the majority of the day, got that diversity during the day. Okay, not brilliantly, because we were all Asian by and large in that school, but still got something. And then I had my faith education in the evening. What we're seeing now is more and more demand for faith schools, and whilst academically a number of them are very, very exceptional, I have to say a large number of them are very, very good. They produce some excellent results when it comes to GCSEs. However, how are they preparing their children for life? And there I think there's a struggle. I'm yet to be convinced that they are preparing them for life, because I put it simply, if you are in an education system from year 5 or the age of 5 until you're 18, we've been asked to stay on until 18 now, and all you have ever known is an environment where people are from the same religious community as you, in some cases not only the same religious community but the same gender as well, how on earth are you going to be prepared for life where in years to come afterwards you may go to university and you're going to find that strange place? You hopefully will want to have ambition to provide services for or line manage or supervise people from different backgrounds. If you have never had any meaningful interaction with people from a different background from a young age, how on earth are you going to do that at the age of 20, 21, 22 and onwards? So I do find that preparation for life aspect of it unconvincing from some of the faith schools. Now, when I say, there's a bit of nuance to all of this, yes, the way in which some faith schools are run compared to others is very, very different. So, I am aware of a number of very good Anglican schools in that regard. There are 1 or 2 very good Muslim schools up in the north. But by and large, I think that it's that word I'm using, meaningful, the meaningful interaction. Where is that happening? I don't buy this. Let's have a school exchange. Let's go along to a different school and meet people from different backgrounds, and we'll have a cup of tea with them and so on, and then come back. No, this is about anchoring connections and anchoring cohesion in society. And the only way you can do that is if you have a wide body of friends who are from different backgrounds. And I'm unconvinced that faith schools have been able to show that as yet on that one. So, but like I said, I think there is an element of balance in there. You can have that mix and then have your religious identity and your religious education supported in a different way. And faith schools have got a lot of, they've got a long way to go in this regard yet. So it's a really good question, Dom.
Yes, one more question we have time for, Simon. Go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, following on really from that point, one has to look at the history in this country of faith-based education and the way that has developed, and regret that education is so strongly based on faith. The radical view of this is to move towards a humanist approach, which is what will bring societies together. And I do see that, you know, religion, whichever religion, has so much trying to think of the word, but so much history of conflict that it almost seems that if we've got to break the mold to move forward, the areas where I see some elements of integration, and many of you will know this, for example, in the Leicestershire Golf Club, where, you know, we do get together socially, but there are not enough vehicles for social integration generally. Would you like just to comment on that, Riaz?
Yeah, I guess in this world of COVID-19, we probably shouldn't share vehicles now anyway, but that's by the by. When I mention faith schools, I mean, in terms of the broad principles, Simon, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. My only, again, you know, the hesitancy, I guess, in some respects is, you know, even for example, in our own city, you know, Hope Hamilton, a school with a strong Christian ethos, you know, part of the Diocesan Board of Education, the overwhelming number of kids that go there are not Christian, you know, Hindu, Muslim, and so on. I'm aware of another school up in Blackburn, which is similar, but they are the exception. I'm yet to see with the broader number of faith schools, an intake which is truly reflective of the kind of society that you and I are calling for, where people of different backgrounds will be able to go in. You know, so the Muslim school that we have in Leicester, the Sikh school that we have in Leicester, the Hindu school that we have as well, 99, 100% in fact of the intake will be people from those respective communities. So the more we do that, and the longer we keep children in that sort of bubble, the more unprepared we are making them for life. And I guess the tragedy would be that the lessons of how some church schools were working, some Anglican schools were working, has not been transferred to the others. And I think that's a missed opportunity. How do you recover that? I think it's going to be very, very difficult. You could do as much as you can within the curriculum. Ofsted are now showing a bit more teeth by going in and asking more searching questions. I've seen a big change from the early days, you know, at the start of this decade, where Ofsted would be very happy for you to show them a few photos of children visiting places of worship, and they'd be happy with that. You know, tick the box, job done. Now they are asking more searching questions. So, what have you actually done to build that connection? What have you done to educate that child? What meaningful connections have they made with others on the back of that? So they are asking more probing questions. But again, I come back to this. If you're in this bubble, if you're in this cocoon, you are not going to have that. Your opportunities for having those genuine connections with people from different backgrounds is going to be limited. And therefore, the stronger we make the state system, the better. And you know, I was fortunate enough that I had that diversity within my, I guess, the Asian ethnicity from a young age, but I only had white friends when I went to college. That was the first time I was able to have white friends, because Crown Hills just didn't have them at that point. So yeah, I think our own journeys, my own journey, I take as read and look at that, and hopefully that helps inform me with my own children as well, as to the kind of world that I wish them to embrace, because a lot of my peers dropped off after school, didn't go on to college, and so they would have gone through their lives without any connection, and you become less of a person with that, in my view.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Riaz. So yeah, keep up the good work, and
thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you again in 6 months, perhaps, and see how you're getting on. And
sure.
Feel free to drop us an email. Let us have an update.
Thanks for your time, and thanks for the invite.
No, thanks for coming. Thank you. So, Richard, would you like to update us on anything at this point before I move on?
Well, not. I mean, as far as the hospital side of things is concerned, it continues to improve. The number of patients in hospital is now less than one ward's worth, and I think the week up to last Friday, I think there'd been 2 people who passed away with COVID in the week. So that's really all I can say. And the trust is now moving towards only reporting weekly instead of daily. And hopefully life is sort of returning back somewhat to normal. But clearly that's not reflected in the situation within Leicester and Oadby with respect to the approach to the continued increased number of community cases. But the good news is that is just not converting into people actually being sufficiently ill to have to be in hospital. All I can say, because the rest is political and beyond my remit.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so attendance today has been, oh, we have a chat. Yes, it is, yes. Thank you. Attendance today has been 29. Next week we have Sarah Luscombe, who's going to be joining us live from South Africa. She runs a very successful business down in Wales, but she's not actually there. She runs it all from her luxury estate over in South Africa. So she's a friend of mine. I went to stay with her and her husband in February, and it was fascinating to see how they're able to run a UK-based business living in a foreign country. And I wanted her to share what kind of technology and methods they use to do that. So she'll be with us next week. We do have a couple of meetings after lunch, and if you have anything you'd like to ask me about, feel free to stick around. Barry and myself are going to have a bit of a chat, and I'll make sure I'm available for anything else that other members would like to talk to me about. So I'm just going to, in fact, could you unmute yourself, everybody? And we can all say goodbye. I can't, unfortunately, do it for you.
Chris,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, David.
Andy, can you and Chris just stay behind to discuss gift aid?
Absolutely, yes. I'll be around. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Chris can.
Mark and John might want to stay, but if Chris and you could stay behind, that'd be good.
I will. Okay, everybody else, thanks for joining, and see you all next week.
Yes, thanks.
Take care.
Bye. Very much, Riaz.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Good.